This is Hunt Nebraska, the official podcast for insight into Nebraska's hunting and shooting sports community. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, our space for sharing stories, information, tips, and techniques. Now, Hunt Nebraska.
And there we go. We're back. We've been really piling in these podcasts today here in the Hunt Nebraska cabin.
Is this our fourth in a week? Or third?
At least third in 2 days.
Man.
At least third in 2 days. Now, we'll see if all of them make the final cut. Kayla's been pretty ruthless with the sharp knife of the editor.
We got to get it down to time.
Yeah. Exactly.
Are you just cutting me out? Is that how it saves about 30 minutes right there?
We'll leave you to find that out here when they're released.
Oh, I don't listen to the podcast.
So I really do appreciate you joining us here at the Hunt Nebraska cabin. We've got, for your viewing and listening pleasure, we've got Jeff Rawlinson. We got Kayla pushing the buttons. We got Hunter Educator Coordinator himself, Hunter. That's kind of tough. Hunter Ed Coordinator Hunter.
Just call me Nikolai.
Nikolai.
You don't have to worry about it. I get it enough anyway.
He is not Russian, folks. But if your first name was Nikolai, you would be.
Could be.
Is that what it is?
And then we have.
And then just me, Hershey.
Yeah, he sells himself short.
This is a special one. This is the first time we've been able to do it. I know our sister podcast, She Goes Outdoors, which if you haven't heard of those gals, you're going to want to check it out. Really cool. They're kind of leading the way. Been doing it for just a little bit longer than we have. But for the first time ever, we're bringing in a guest to the Hunt Nebraska cabin via digital magic over there. We've got, make sure I say this right, Angie Kokes from North Loop, Nebraska. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Well, there are not many people that can say they're from North Loop, Nebraska.
Not very many.
Even fewer that can say they're Angie Kokes. So
yeah, there you go. There you go.
Thank goodness.
Now, are you a North Loop native?
No, I'm an Ord native. So,
Nice
and we
town.
actually live halfway between Ord and North Loop right now.
Oh, moving downriver.
neat country.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Ord's just a little bit bigger for those trying to find the geography of the Nebraska map. But North Loop is 30 minutes southeast of there?
Maybe 15, 20.
15, 20, and home of about 200 to 300 people, if I remember correctly. So that's pretty cool. But we're not here to talk about geography. We are here to talk about what has made this gal famous, not only here in the state of Nebraska, but I was just finishing up an Outdoor Life article reading about Angie and some of her accomplishments. Now, we're going to, obviously this is Hunt Nebraska, so we're going to talk a little bit about hunting. So Angie, you better give us a lowdown on, a little background. How long you been hunting? What species have you hunted?
Okay, so I shot my first shotgun at 3 years old. I bugged my dad so much that he finally just gave me the gun, helped me enough. He figured it would knock me on my butt and that would be the end of it. And I did the opposite. I stood up and said, let's do it again.
I like Angie. I like this gal.
And I was also the little girl that when my dad would go coyote hunting on Sunday mornings before church, if I thought he wasn't going to get me out of bed to take me with him, I would sleep in front of the back door so that he would have to wake me up.
So this lifestyle kind of chose you, as well as you put in a little effort. So it's not been something that's brand spanking new by any means.
No, it 100% did. I always say God made me a hunter, and he laughed when he did it.
Well, and Angie, I notice a method to your madness here. I think you just wanted to spend time with Dad at first. Was that a draw for you, or?
It was very much a draw for me. He's a turkey hunter, which I never really got into, but upland game, birds, waterfowl, doves, you name it. It was in reloading. My dad did a lot of reloading. So that was also something in the wintertime. I was a huge help because nobody else knew how to put the shells in the box quite like I did.
There's a skill.
There
is a skill.
Alternating. Sometimes you got to alternate.
And hold the box at an angle. You got to hold it at an angle. Yeah, Angie knows.
Really?
Angie knows. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. Now, you still hunt quite a few different things. In fact, I do believe you were with our very own Julia Plugi and Kayla of She Goes Outdoors doing a pheasant hunt recently. Is that true?
That is true. I was a mentor there, and that's something that is just totally near and dear to my heart, too. My parents had me mentoring probably starting at 13 or 14 years old. And it's something that we need to share as accomplished hunters, or I guess just hunters that are real comfortable with what they're doing, because somebody shared it with us. Somebody took us out there, so we got to give it back.
Oh, I love her ethic. I like this ethic.
Yeah.
Angie, you're so spot on. In fact, 180,000 hunters in the great state of Nebraska, if half of them would just share their passion every year with another hunter, like you've done all your life, this concern we have over hunter numbers would not be a concern at all. It would go away. And so, hats off to you already. That's awesome.
That is I echo the same thing. And what's kind of cool is you've been kind of an ambassador on several different levels. And we're going to jump into deer hunting because that is kind of on the mind of a lot of Nebraska hunters right now. And you've been kind of a pioneer in a lot of different ways, showing folks that it can be done in different methods. So we'll jump into here real quick. But give us the lowdown. Your first deer hunt, when was it?
So that was the one thing that my family didn't do. They didn't deer hunt, but I always had this huge desire to deer hunt. And again, I'm going to go back to God because nobody else knows where it came from. So clearly it was from above. But my dad, once again, finally gave in and lined up a friend to take me hunting on rifle season. So opening morning, we drove out down a road, pulled in through a pasture gate, and we sat in that gate and watched out over a canyon all day long. And that's all we did. I didn't know any better, but even as a young girl, I thought there just has to be more to this than this. This has to be more exciting. I've heard my friends tell stories, so the next day I was very tiny at the time, bull barrel 22-250 out. And I walked for the next 9 days through a friend's pasture that let me hunt. And I didn't get anything that year, but I am very stubborn. And so the next year, my dad bought me a used 243, and I still hunt with that gun to this day when I'm not spear hunting, and I was successful that next year. But what I love to show people is that you don't necessarily need YouTube channels. They're great, don't get me wrong. You don't necessarily need mentored hunts, and again, awesome. But never be afraid to just go out there and try it on your own. I mean, I am largely self-taught, 99% self-taught, and I'm probably to the level that I am because I invented mistakes along the way. I did all
I
the
like
mistakes
that.
I did all the mistakes that everybody else made, but then I also invented dozens and dozens on top of that. But I learned from them.
Of all the characteristics that get celebrated as a hunter, stubbornness is not one you hear mentioned much. But you think of some of the successful and consistent hunters, a lot of trial and error, just a lot of, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this happen one way or the other. And errors be darned. I'm going to work my way through it.
Yep.
Yes.
I think we can define education, Angie, as trial and error. And some of the best education is trial and error. And I think I have a lot of respect for people like yourself who aren't afraid to just go at it and through trial and error learn how to do something. And you've learned how to do not just something. We talked rifle, and then when we talk to hunters, we say, "Well, you're a rifle hunter." No, I like to use a stick with a pointy end on. Oh, you're a bow hunter. Well, no, it's a little different for me. You've accomplished some things that 99.99% of the hunters out there have not.
It's true, and I'm going to relate it to I was just stubborn, and I've never ever said I was going to do something and not accomplished it. So I always tell people failure is only an option if you quit.
There you go. There you go. Now, folks, here in Nebraska in the fall of 2012 is when we allowed hand-thrown spear to become a legal method of take for deer hunting. And, Jeff, I can recall when that happened, a lot of question and head-scratching kind of went into it thinking, how many folks are actually going to do it? Yeah. And kind of we had kind of some side bets, Angie, going on who might be the actual first person. We knew it was going to happen sooner or later. But we were kind of wondering how soon it was going to be that we'd hear about our first deer harvested in Nebraska with a hand-thrown spear. And I don't know that I remember that first year hearing of anybody being successful at it. I assume there was.
There might have been, but there was nothing that I heard of. But lo and behold, there was somebody perfecting her craft, her skills in this very arena.
Yeah. So walk us through that, Angie. How did you decide to use that method? I mean, how did spear hunting become a part of your life?
So again, it's a little bizarre, and I'm just going to keep going back to him because I never intended on becoming a spear hunter. I had a major arm reconstruction surgery in 2013 that basically from my shoulder to my wrist that left quite a lot of doubt as to whether I would even be able to shoot a bow again. And I had a follow-up surgery to that in 2015 that left even more doubt that it was going to happen. But when my fingers started to move one day, and that's how significant it was devastating. I got a spark, and my husband knows that spark, and instantly he just goes, "No, honey," he says, "you're gonna please just take it easy this year." He's like, this has been hard, and he wasn't lying. It was awful, but he said, "Just promise me you're still going to use your crossbow this year." And while I have nothing against any weapon, to each their own, I mean, I support everyone 100%. At that moment, he handicapped me. And like, I was like, babe, nobody handicapped me.
I can about attest to that. And I don't hardly know you, Angie.
So I was just furious, and I shouldn't have been, but I was. I mean, I could feel my blood just boiling inside of me. So I just screamed at him. I said, "I am not only going to shoot a deer this year with my bow, I said, I'm going to spear a bear someday." And we both just stopped dead in our tracks. I literally thought I might throw up. I think he probably wanted to throw up. And I went pale. He just turned around and walked away, and he got probably 15 or 20 feet away and just said, "Shit." The next day he handed me a homemade spear.
No way.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, he did. Because like I said, I never say I'm going to do something and it doesn't happen. So over the next few months, I started throwing left-handed because my right hand wasn't working quite good enough yet. But as it started to working and I got to throwing better and better, I contacted a friend of mine in Canada and I said, "Hey, will you take me on this bear hunt, or at least help me get set up for it?" And he was like, "Absolutely. I've hunted with this guy several times." He says, "I know you can do this," but he said, "I'd really feel more comfortable if you got something else underneath your belt first besides a bear." And I'm like, "Okay, well, what else am I supposed to spear?" And Adam said, "Deer hunting is legal in Nebraska with a spear." And I went, "Oh." To go along with this, he had put me on the ground bow hunting probably 10 years prior to this because I made a really bad choice in a tree stand one night. So he took them all away. But putting me on the ground, I have to be disciplined sometimes. It has to happen.
This is an interesting relationship with your,
not sure how, but yeah.
But by him putting me on the ground, like, it actually made me a hunter. I got to the point where I could pluck hair out of deer. And I would take it home and give it to him as he was accusing me I wasn't seeing anything. So we felt confident enough that, okay, I've developed this skill to get close enough to him. Yeah, I should be able to spear a deer. Not from the ground, at least not until a couple weeks ago.
That's like counting coup right there.
Well,
right.
Angie, I have to agree with you. There is something much more intimate about hunting from the ground than hunting from a tree stand, in my opinion. And I think you just hit the nail on the head there, because to me it's a much more intimate hunt.
Yes, absolutely.
So
interesting.
So tell us about your spear. Obviously when we were really first talking about this here in Nebraska back in 2011 and 2012, we had all sorts of ideas, and even today I think people probably have some misconceptions on what it looks like, how it works, all that type of stuff. So describe the spear you hunt with.
So the spear I'm hunting with now, and I measured it for Outdoor Life, is actually 6'3" long. Tim Wells makes it. He actually uses a longer one. I don't care for the longer one because if you're in a tree on your back throw, it's much more likely to hit a branch. And if you hit a branch, game over, come back tomorrow.
Did you say 6'3"?
About our height, about as tall as we are, Hershey. Yeah. Why are you laughing, Kayla? That didn't require a laugh. Okay, 6'3". Anyway, so I take it, Angie, you're not buying these at Walmart. I mean, you're not. These are pretty not easy to find.
I'm not even sure Shields has a spear department.
I don't think Cabela's or Bass Pro has a spear department. So these are custom propositions. I understand.
They are. Like I said, I get them from Tim Wells. He has them on his website. I am fortunate enough that I don't have to buy them because I test them for him. So that's nice because I think they are about $125 a piece. So you don't want to. Sure. You don't want to be playing with them.
I've been trying to convince Ruger of that for years, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Ironically, my first spear that I hunted with, other than the homemade one, was a cold steel spear. And I didn't know Tim Wells at the time or when I started or if anybody even did this. So it was a huge learning curve for us. But when I called Cold Steel, I'm like, can I hunt with this spear? Oh, sure. Yep, you can hunt with this spear. Well, 2 deer and a bear later, they actually discontinued the spear that I was using, and I panicked, and I called them again, and I said, I need this spear. I've thrown this a million times. My muscle memory fits this spear. And they said, that spear was never intended to be hunted with. That's a toy. Like, you killed a bear with a toy.
So did they discontinue it or just retire it? I mean, they might have called it the Angie Kokes model and just retired it.
They said they discontinued it, but they sent me all of the spears. So I have enough of those spears to probably last me 2 or 3 lifetimes, which was nice of them. But like I said, now I'm using the Wells spear.
Gotcha.
And what determines a lifetime for a spear? Is it so many throws? Is it until the tip is blunted and it's not sharp anymore? What kind of determines that?
Well, it basically what happens when it hits the animal is the animal, like a lot of the times they'll be carrying the spear off and it'll be sticking out on both sides. Like with the bear, it was so thick and dense that he hit a lot of trees, so it bent the spear. I didn't try to bend that one back straight just for the significance of here's my spear that I speared a bear with.
That's cool.
I like that.
Yeah, you can straighten them. Now, like with Tim's spears, they're solid steel, so they can be straightened. The cold steel ones had a wood shaft in the center. Once that broke, you're done. It's game over. But I resharpen my own spears, so as long as they don't bend, I can use them forever.
Now, Angie, you strike me as somebody who loves adventure. I mean, I can read you like a book. You're an adventurous spirit, right? You're on a bear hunt. You're on a bear hunt with a spear, a pointy stick. That's the only thing between you and this bear. Describe the emotion immediately after throwing that spear.
For the bear?
Correct.
The bear was so exhausting just to get to that point because first I was supposed to hunt in Ontario. And then it got banned over the Beaumar issue with his bear in Canada. So then I waited another year and I was supposed to hunt in Alberta. And the Ontario hunt got canceled 2 months ahead of time. The Alberta hunt got canceled 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave. Same reason. So, and I was also starting to have some more issues with my arm at that point. So I was in a bit of a panic, like this has to happen. So by the time the spear actually went through the bear and we knew it was a good throw. And I mean, he was, even though we couldn't see him, he was only 30 yards away. I think at that point it was just relief, because I had, again, 4 or 5 years into saying I was going to do something. And it took that much that I wasn't in tears or anything, but just relief. I finally did it.
That's pretty cool. So when were you first successful here in Nebraska on a deer with a spear?
2016.
And you had some close calls just ahead of that, even the season before, right?
I did. It took me, so that year, that was the first year that I actually hunted with a spear. And it took me, I think, 16 hunts. Probably the first 10 of those, I had opportunities, which I've never had a year with as much opportunity as that one. So we're going to go with God again, because that's just not normal to have that much opportunity. But I couldn't throw. Like, I legit mentally could not make myself release that spear, because that's a lot of pressure to throw something at an animal from 20 feet in the air and just pray, is it going to penetrate? Adam had been telling me all along, yes, this thing is going clean through this animal, don't worry. But I was concerned. What if I hit a rib? You know, the last thing in the world I ever want to do is wound an animal. It would end me. I mean, I think it's going to happen someday probably, but I didn't want it to happen. So I had 2 or 3 hunts I literally couldn't throw. I had to just come home and like mentally regather myself and say, you've got this. And so when I finally threw, I came home and I told Adam, I said, that was the most perfect miss I will ever make in my life. Because I threw and the deer literally took 1 step to the side, legit, like just stepped over to the side, and it stuck in the ground right behind her shoulder blade, right where it should have, except that she stepped over. And it wobbled back and forth and actually hit her in the side, and she still stayed there. So I'm mind blown about that. I'm like, what just, I missed, but what just happened? So then I tried to grab my second spear. Well, I didn't have it in the right place. Lesson number 18,500,000. Now I got to figure out where to put the second spear, because they stay around. So the next day, and I'm posting this on social, I put it all on social media. I mean, I own it all. And people are like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. The next day, I have to come home and tell Adam and post on social media that I not only stuck 1 spear in the ground, I stuck 2 in the ground.
A personal best.
Yeah, personal best. So sharpen the spears again. And I couldn't figure out, I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like they weren't looking at me. But then it finally like a light bulb went off, and I went, oh, they're not looking at me, but I can still see their eyeball. And so if I could see their eyeball, then they would see my throw in their peripheral, and just, I'm assuming, think it's a branch coming out of the tree, because these deer do not spook. The doe I speared this fall, there were doe on either side of me. She was directly in front of me. I couldn't even get stood up. I just leaned out over the stand and just went, whoop. It stuck in her. She ran off. I looked to my left. The doe's still standing there munching away on a leaf. And the right one is like, I wonder what just happened. It is the most bizarre thing you've ever seen. So I figured out the eye thing. So it was 2 or 3 days later, and I finally, and it was a really small doe, just a young doe, but she came in, turned broadside, turned her head completely away as if there was an angel going, here's your chance, don't screw this one up. And I didn't even think, I don't even remember honestly picking the spear up. I just let it go. And she was about 6 yards out, and it hit her and went clean through, stuck out on both sides. And I was like, ugh. That was a little bit creepy, I'm not going to lie. But she expired. Like, the amount of blood loss from that spear is, you can't imagine it until you've seen it.
Yeah, well, they're huge blades on those tips.
Yes. And people worry about the lethality of them. Oh my. I mean, I've hunted with rifles and every weapon known to God and man, and I'll put them right up there.
Now, you've grown up eating wild game all your life, but doesn't venison taste just a little bit better coming from a hand-thrown spear of your own throwing?
It does.
I have to say,
even an older buck.
Yeah. I have to say, because you don't just pick up a spear one day and go, this will work. I mean, there's obviously quite a bit of effort you've put in there. So I got to assume that first deer was the culmination of just a ton of work. Probably felt pretty sweet.
It did. Like I said, I didn't think before I throw, and oftentimes I don't think, and I don't get nervous before I throw, but after I throw, I am a wreck. And I mean, you could call it buck fever. I just a wreck. My heart rate will go through the roof. I shake. I can't breathe. I feel like I'm choking. And yeah, it's in what am I, nine deer in now, it hasn't changed. I mean, it's still,
that's awesome.
Still the exact same.
Same thing happens to Hershey when he stands up to speak in front of a crowd. So you're not alone. You've got a lot of people have the same feelings. Same feelings.
Well, I'm kind of curious because this isn't something you just walk up and pick up and like, boom, all right, I know exactly where this is going to throw. It had to have been a lot of practice to figure out how you not only hold it and release it, but how you aim, if that's the right word for it.
Yep. So there is no right or wrong way to how you hold or throw. And the only reason that I say this is because I've hunted now with Tim Wells, who's literally a world-renowned spear hunter. And we both hold and throw completely different. Like, he was like, "What are you doing?" And I looked at him and I said, "What are you doing?" And we were just like, okay, let's just agree to disagree on how we're going to hold and throw this thing. But I threw probably nothing short of millions of times before I ever even considered hunting. And like I said, we thought it would happen from the ground. Once we realized, and I know it can now, but back then I was like, this is going to have to be from a tree stand. So I got my tree stands back, and Adam actually drove the loader in the loader bucket into the yard one day before he put the tree stands back up. He says, "Get your spears, get in the loader." I'm like, "What?" He said, "I want to see, before I agree to let you do, this hunt, I want to see if you can hit anything." So he raised me up in the loader and put a corn leaf on top of a round bale and just kept handing me spears and letting me throw. And he'd stand about 30 yards away each time. But I hit it 10 times in a row, and he said, "Okay, I think you're good enough to hunt." So
that's impressive. That
impressive.
is impressive. So what is your distance? 20 yards?
No, so 10 yards is
10
my
yards.
max. 20. I'm 20 feet up, and I missed a buck last year at 10 yards, and I just misjudged my aim because, like, here's his belly. It went right underneath his belly. I mean, I was an inch or two just too low, but I came home and I practiced, and it won't happen again.
So 10 yards is your max. What's the closest deer you've harvested? You said you're up to 9 now. What was the closest?
The doe this fall, and she, like I said, I have ladder stands that Adam built for me so that I can run around like a monkey. They're really big. She was right at the bottom of the ladder, and so it was a straight down throw, which is, Tim loves that throw. I don't care for it at all. You have a really hard time getting a pass through straight down. And if you go straight down, if you think about it, there's no blood trail. Like, they're not bleeding out the top of their back. So that was my closest deer, and also the only one that I've ever had to track. Everything else has died within sight. But her, I had to track with no blood trail.
Now, this is. I find this just captivating. I really do, Angie. So you've hunted, successfully harvested deer. You've successfully harvested bear. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm reminding you, with a spear, just a long stick with a pointy end. What's next on the dream list here?
I've never had a dream list, and people they always kind of look at me like I have a purple head when I say that. Maybe a mountain lion, but I don't know that that's possible with a spear. Tim's talked about maybe going for red stag. That'd be cool. But I like hunting for the challenge that it presents me, and by that I mean I want to do the hunting myself. I've gone on guided hunts, and I have nothing against them, and I've enjoyed them tremendously. But what I do around here is, for me, the learning the animals and the hunting. So I think that's maybe why I don't have a bucket list of animals, because I just don't want to go into somebody else's backyard and have them do all the work and the prep for me. And basically all I do is walk up and pull the trigger or throw the spear, if that makes sense.
I don't want to just walk up and throw the spear. No, not making fun of you, Angie. I'm just thinking that in itself would still be a phenomenal feat, regardless of who did all the planning and the work. So pretty impressive.
And folks, in Angie's defense, I know that we're getting this podcast put down, but in a couple of weeks, you're going to join Jeff and I on a live radio show on a Thursday evening in November. And in Angie's defense, she had to make sure that the radio show was after shooting hours or spear throwing hours, I guess, in her case, because she said, November 10th, the rut's on. That's going to be a good day. I'm not coming out of the woods or out of the field until after hours are over. So you've obviously enjoyed whitetail quite a bit. And then this year, just a couple weeks ago, tagged your first whitetail buck with a spear.
I did. And from the ground. I mean, who knew? I learn things every day. It is possible. That
is pretty cool. And that was a pretty close stalk as well.
It was. It was just over a riverbank. I probably should go measure it so that I'm telling people the right story. I'm telling him he was about 8 foot down. He might have been only about 6 foot down, but
we'll believe you either way.
You're good.
Yes.
So
super thick, thick cover. The wind was perfect. The stars aligned for a spear hunter.
Jumping back, Angie, to the spear you use itself, and it sounds like you've got a slew of them now for practicing with and perfecting your craft. But you were saying you use a steel shafted spear. Is that pretty common in the spear hunting community? I imagine it's a relatively small community or group of people that do it, and I'm sure you probably have contact with them. Is steel the choice shaft, or are there other products out there that use wood or other types of metal?
It is. That's what most people are using now, and you would honestly be surprised at how many people are carrying spears with them to the bow stand, but they're carrying them with them, in case that something walks close enough to them. But yeah, they're obviously old school. They were made out of bamboo, wood. Steel just distributes the weight and gives you a little bit more weight than you can get from wood.
Nothing drives a point home like steel.
Yeah, and then the spear tip itself. Are those with the Tim Wells spears used? Are those screw in, or how are those attached to the spear shaft?
Yep, his are screw in, and that's the only piece that separates from his. Like the cold steel, the wood center was separate, and then the two ends were separate. And that was always fun traveling through airports with a bow case full of spear parts.
Yeah, you're going to get noticed.
A little bit.
I'm sure you have to check those. That's not a carry-on, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's not a carry-on.
Oh,
it's just a spear. Probably not.
Well, and you brought up something that I kind of find surprising, and Hunter, appreciate you kind of broaching that subject. The spear hunting community. Do we have a large one here in Nebraska?
It's pretty big,
really?
Actually. Yeah.
Shocking.
And it's the guys around here. My hometown guys. They're real familiar with me, and so they know that they can approach me or talk to me, and anybody can. But I mean, they'll do it on social media. They'll do it in the coffee shop. They'll ask me a question because they know I know what I'm talking about. Social media, you'd think at this point that they would know that I know what I'm talking about, but most guys will send me a private message. It's like they don't want to get called out in public asking a girl a question. But there have been a lot of guys from Nebraska that are like, hey, this is, I've got this spear. What do I do with it? And I'm like, chuck it. That's what you do with it.
Trial and error.
Trial and error. 2 million throws. Yeah. 2 million throws.
Yes.
This is impressive. I'm really enjoying this interview.
It really is. Has anyone harvested, in your knowledge, 9 deer with a spear in Nebraska like you have?
No, to my knowledge, I only know one other young man, Caleb Boston, harvested his first doe last year. He's the only other one that I know has been successful in Nebraska.
So I got to assume that, 9 deer is pretty darn successful. Probably above average, I'm guessing. I don't know many other states that allow it on deer. But.
It's only 9 deer more than I've harvested with a spear, so it's not like there's a big gap. Wow. Pretty darn. You talked about your shoulder injury, and of course that's slowing you down. Now, I know a lot of folks who have shoulder issues, and they end up going to a crossbow. You, on the other hand, had shoulder issues, so you ended up going to a spear, which does not translate necessarily. But I'm totally impressed. How is that working now? Have you got this down pat to where the shoulder's not bothering you anymore, and you're able to chuck that spear just as easy as you can be, or is that a concern of yours?
Oh, it's a huge concern of mine because I have damage to a nerve in my forearm and I'm missing an extensor in my forearm from the first surgery. That if I ever throw incorrectly, which is part of the reason I had to quit roping. I was a team roper, but I had to quit roping because that action, the twisting was messing with that nerve. But if I ever throw incorrectly and that nerve snaps, it's game over. So I have to be pretty careful.
So you then become the only one-handed spear thrower, deer hunter in Nebraska?
Well,
because I'm guessing you're not going to slow down any.
I'm not going to slow down. I started throwing left-handed. We'd have to go back to it.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm trying to think of another method Nebraska's going to have to approve just to make it more challenging.
Oh, can I put in a request?
Spears with blunts? What are you going here?
I would. Okay, one, and I think it's a no-brainer since the spear is legal. But atlatl, I have an atlatl. I wouldn't hunt with it just because it's easier than the spear, I think.
Really?
But I would love to see my atlatl friends get that, and then I would personally love for Nebraska to add the blowgun.
Oh, okay.
Please.
I think that's that Tim Wells influence on you. Doesn't he blowgun as well?
He does. And again, I was hunting with a blowgun before I knew him. So we're two very much peas in a pod, but yeah, I hunted with a blowgun as a young girl.
You're kind of become Tim Wells' mentor, it sounds like.
That's what I'm hearing.
That's what I heard.
Hearing. Have you ever just thought about using a rock? I mean, just like picking up that'd be a challenge, right? I mean,
that would be a challenge.
Slingshot.
Slingshot. There you go.
Slingshot. Yeah, I'm just, like I said, totally impressed.
If she's counting coup within feet of deer, there's nothing off the table.
Hershey, how many guys, gals that could keep their cool few feet from a deer just with a spear in their head? Now, then go to a bear. No. How many people could just even keep their cool? Do you find, and I think you've alluded to this, Angie, do you ever get the shakes? Do you ever just like, oh my gosh, this is about to happen? Do you ever do the yippee dance when you're done? I want to know these things.
Well, I don't get the shakes prior because I'm so focused that just everything goes away. It's almost tunnel vision. But the whoopee dance afterwards, if I did that, I'd fall out of my tree stand. Again, I said, I'm a total wreck when it's over. And I mean, most of the time I'm just like, yes, and I'll text Adam right away, but yeah, I'm a wreck when it's over with.
And Adam's already proven he'll take the tree stands away, which is not good.
We don't want to go there.
We get into November. But that's just, wow. I don't know how else to say it. As a fellow bow hunter, I've just got to ask, are you doing anything for scent control when you're getting him basically, even closer than a lot of us bow hunters need to get him for that throw, especially the one that was right below you? Are you doing anything different? What's your secret?
So I am very particular about scent. I shower before I go every single time. My clothes are kept in different containers. Oftentimes I won't even get dressed until I'm out in the field, or I'll change in the field. I will say with the buck, that all went out the window because I knew there was pretty good odds he had bedded where I thought he had bedded. And I had just taken lunch to the guys in the field. A friend had even called and he said, "Hey, I think there might be a buck on you." And I'm like, mm-hmm. And so I didn't feel like I had time to change clothes. And I knew if he was where I thought he was, that the wind was going to be in my favor and I wasn't going to need any of that. So that worked out to my advantage. Last night, I'm not sure how this one did, because you can do everything right and they're still deer. They're still going to smell you, that matriarch doe, which I hate those things. But anyway, I had a really nice buck come in last night and I can't burn another buck tag because I'm waiting on my big one. So I passed a really nice buck last night, but he stood maybe 4 yards downwind of me and never went to me.
That's pretty impressive.
I was filming him and I'm like, oh, he's going to blow out of here any second and take everything with him. And he just never did. So I got it right then.
That is
wow.
neat. Now, I often tell folks that when I picked up the bow for turkey and for deer, I learned a whole bunch more about those critters because I had to get them, within 20 yards oftentimes, as opposed to, with some firearms. Sometimes the first time you see them and they're in range, it's, learning's done and you're switching gears. I got to assume when you're that close to all these critters, and like you've mentioned many times, you've had deer well within range of a lot of other methods and sometimes even in range of the spear, but you're not taking that throw. Those are still wonderful times to learn a little bit about that critter.
100%. And yeah, I thought I was a pretty decent hunter before I picked up the spear. And again, I would never take anything from any hunter, but the spear hunting has taken it to like not the next level, but about 10 levels above where I thought I was. And it's just for that reason. It's because like last night I had to sit and watch a buck that 99% of the people in the world would shoot. And I had to sit and watch him 4 feet away or 4 yards away. But you cannot even imagine just the seeing their eyes that close, and they're what are their eyes doing when they're looking around? Because he knew something wasn't right, but he couldn't figure out what it was. What are their ears telling you? Is there's just, I don't know, it gets you so down to just instinctual. And I think as humans, we, like you said, with the rifle, I mean, it's over with before you can even let like animal instincts, if that makes sense, take over. So yeah, it's just, I actually had an outfitter who has some land close to us. Last night we were messaging and he says, "You've gotten so good, it's almost stupid." And I'm like, I don't know if that's a compliment or not.
Well, Angie, after all the water under the bridge since you started this journey, what's the one big thing you'd like people to know? What you've learned about yourself?
Oh, never quit. Never quit, and you're capable of anything. If you don't think that you can do something, it is simply in your mind. Because if you put your mind to it and you decide that you can do anything. Something
tells me you've applied that logic many times before, Angie.
There you go.
It may get me killed. I just probably need to do a side note on that.
Well, do really appreciate you spending some time with us here at the Hunt Nebraska cabin, Angie. I'm looking forward to our radio show here on November 10th on KFOR 1240 here in Lincoln. And folks, if you want to stream that, you can do that at KFORnow.com. You can listen to it live. It'll also be available for download after we do that one. Just real quick, though, if somebody now has been inspired from listening to this podcast or the radio show in just a couple of weeks, where does a person start if they want to get into this method of deer hunting?
Oh, again, now you've got YouTube's as an option. I get tons of messages from people, and I do my best to try to answer all the questions that they have. But honestly, spear hunting is just something that you, again, chuck it. You gotta get one in your hand and just start throwing.
There you go. What did you say, Jeff? 1 million throws to go?
1 million throws to go. I mean, that's just kind of my take home from Angie is millions of throws. It's kind of like, muskie's the fish of 1,000 casts. Well, the spear hunting is the sport of 1 million throws.
There you go. So, well, thanks again for joining us and giving up your time here. Congratulations on your achievements so far, and I know that's just spurred you on to get out there and do some more hunting. And so, until next time, Andrew, we appreciate you being here.
Hunt Nebraska, brought to you by your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.